Thank you, Carol. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am Dr. Steve. We're going to have a fun time. It's going to be great. I guarantee it. And so I want you to, if you will, imagine living 70, 80, 90 years of quality health. What's the key word? Quality. Right. And so I want you to imagine retiring when you want to, being able to run on the beach with your spouse or significant other, playing with your grandkids, doing the things that you want to do, not relying on medications or surgeries to be able to do those things, all while saving hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills and avoiding bankruptcy, which is the #1 cause of bankruptcy today, is medical bills. So I have a question for you. Who here thinks that that's possible? And so we all know that there are people who do accomplish that, right? And of the people in this room, who here thinks that they're capable of living that life? And more importantly, who believes that they're worthy and deserving of living that life? Good, that's right. By the time we're done tonight, my intention is that every single one of you will know that that it is possible, and you are capable, and you are absolutely worthy and deserving of living that kind of life. So what I'd like to do to start is to ask you to, well, let me see. First, what we're going to talk about tonight is I'm going to talk to you about the 3 leading killers in the United States today and how you can avoid that 98%. We're going to answer 4 questions that everyone must answer at one time or another in some way, shape, or form. And the sooner that you answer those questions, the better off you are. And how you answer those questions will determine your health from this point forward. And so what I'd like to do is, you know, who gets the best results? The person who talks about being on a diet, like a New Year's resolution, or the person in the gym getting the best result, right? And so it's the people who are engaged and who take action. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share information with you tonight that can literally change your life. Do you want to retain 2% of that or 100% of that? 100%, absolutely, right? And so what I'm going to ask you all to do, can we agree to everybody to be fully engaged in this information? Because I want everybody here to get the most out of this. So, to start, you have a piece of paper in front of you, and if I can borrow this, Sandy, and on this piece of paper, there's a space underneath there, and what I'd like you to all do is start by just writing a 1. So everybody write 1 in the upper left-hand corner of that space, and that 1 is going to represent your 1-year goals. Does everybody have the paper and a pen? Good. So go ahead and write next to the 1 whatever you would like to have or achieve 1 year from now. You could write anything you want. It could be a materialistic thing. It could be an accomplishment. Anything that you desire, write something in that you would like to have a year from today. Then underneath the 1, what I want you to do is write a 5. And that 5 is going to be your 5-year goal. And go ahead and do the same thing and write in anything that you would like to achieve in 5 years. It could be anything you want. And underneath the 5, I want you to write a 10. And then you're going to put your 10-year goal and anything that you want to achieve or acquire, anything you desire to have in 10 years from now. Okay, who's written all 3? Who's written 2 of them? Okay, so everybody stop for just a sec, and you can fill that in afterwards. And so looking at your goals, who here would agree or thinks that it would be helpful to have a little extra money to be able to accomplish those goals? Right? That's going to be helpful, right? And who here, looking at those goals, would agree that you may need a little extra time to achieve those goals, correct? But what's the one thing we absolutely need to have in order to accomplish those goals?
Health.
Our health, absolutely. That's right. So, who here, just out of curiosity, wrote nursing home down for 1, 5, or 10 year? Right? Nobody. Nobody ever does that. But the shame of it is, right here in our community, the nursing homes are full. And it's $127,000 on average a year to live in the nursing home, and people are outbidding each other, family members, to get their loved ones in there. And they can only get there when somebody leaves, right? And so, when's the best time to avoid the nursing home? Is now. That's right. And so, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is our most precious asset? Somebody said health, right? Yeah, absolutely. Would everybody agree health is the greatest wealth? Health, without our health, nothing else matters. So that's our most precious asset, right? And so it stands to follow the next question is, well, what is it? What is health? It's our most precious asset. But whenever I ask that question, I always get that it gets a little quiet in here, right? Because we don't think about defining it necessarily. I'll tell you what most people are taught. And in our society, most people think that health is if you feel good and you look good, right? Wouldn't you all agree? People think of our health. But when we define health that way, we miss the top 3 killers. Who here knows somebody who's had heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, any of those things? Keep your hands up real high. Who here knows somebody who's had cancer or suffer from cancer, right? The majority. 5 out of 6 of us will die from heart disease or cancer statistically today. But do you feel it happening? We only feel it at the end stage, right? I had a friend who died last year, and he's at 50 years old. He was a hockey player. He felt great. He looked great. He's a goalie. He's in great shape. He dove for the puck. He felt an excruciating pain in his mid-back. Went for an MRI, which led to another MRI, and a long story short is his body was riddled with cancer, and they gave him 6 weeks to live. And he ended up living quite a bit longer than that because of the lifestyle that he adopted. But he did pass away just 1 year ago, a few days ago. But he didn't feel anything. So was he okay until he dove on the puck? No, that is something that's years in the making. That's the end stage when we're seeing those things. So the leading cause of death in the United States, so those are the second and third leading causes of death today. But the leading cause is when we don't feel so good and we don't look so good. And then we go to the doctor. And the doctor, the medical doctor, is mostly trained in crisis intervention, crisis care. So there's 2 primary tools that a medical doctor employs, and that's drugs and surgery. And so they're going to get to that crisis. You know, people are in pain, they're going to get you out of pain, they're going to try to manage that very quickly. But the problem is, most of the time, they don't answer the question, why? Why there's a problem. A lot of the time, what we're doing with crisis care is we're just covering up or masking symptoms. If the fire alarm went off in here today, who would go run over there and pull the batteries out? Because that noise is annoying, right? Just like pain's annoying, you know, but it didn't get to the cause of the problem, right? And so what's going to happen is you might not hear that shrieking noise anymore, but that fire's still burning. And that can burn your house down eventually. You know, and in the case of health, we laugh at the things that, you know, the way that we would take care of our health compared to, you know, a fire alarm or your automobile. On the way driving here, if the red light went on your automobile, who would take a piece of tape out and cover it up so you don't see it anymore? And so that's what we do a lot of the time with our health, with our body, because we're covering up symptoms. So it's not your medical doctor's fault. It's a failure of the system that we're not really getting to the root cause of the problem oftentimes. And that's why medicine and medication and the practice of medicine is the #1 killer in the United States today. There is a paper online, you can look it up, it's called Death by Medicine. And they're PhDs and scientists, and they put together a research study, and they showed that the largest number of people beyond heart disease and cancer is actually from medical intervention, because they're not getting to the cause, because we're treating the symptoms a lot of the time. So, what's health? The definition of health then, if it's not how we look and feel, I'll give you the definition from the World Health Organization. And this has been the standing definition since the 1946, I think they developed this definition. It's an optimal state of function, of your body functioning mentally, socially, spiritually, and physically, and not merely the absence of infirmity or disease. So the short answer, so write this down on your paper, is health equals 100% function. When the body's functioning properly, we're healthy. So what's confusing is, of course, then we're going to look good and feel good when we are healthy. But just looking good and feeling good does not mean that we're healthy. Function is what determines how healthy we are. So the #3 question that is really important that we all answer is, what controls function? What controls our health? Function is our health. What controls that? Where does it come from? Well, on your paper, I want everybody to write 2 little dots. And then just imagine those 2 little dots being microscopic, tiny, tiny dots. And that's where we all come from in the beginning. We come from 2 microscopic cells from mom and dad that comes together, and there's a whole process, amazing process, and 9 months later, boom, there we are. And so would everybody agree that there's some type of intelligence organizing that? Right? And so what happens when we're born then, right? Where does that intelligence go? What's the difference between a baby and a grown adult? We're just still big babies, right? At that point. The intelligence doesn't go anywhere, it's still in our body. And where does that intelligence reside? And if I gave you a course on embryology, you would know that the very first system that ever develops from those 2 cells is the nervous system. So that intelligence resides in our nervous system, in our brain. If somebody's heart stops or their brain stops, you know, which one defines them being dead? Really, you can restart the heart, right? But when the brain stops, we're dead, because the intelligence and the life force and the healing force comes from our brain and nervous system. If you cut somebody's head off, they're gone. They're dead. If you cut a nerve to any organ, it'll die. Is that a belief or a fact? That's a fact. So I want to scale it back a little bit, and let's imagine now, if we take, here's for all the visuals, I got a nice visual for everybody to see. Here's the brain, here's the spinal cord. So that intelligence is coming through the brain, through the spinal cord, out the nerves to every cell, tissue, and organ in our body. It controls, coordinates, integrates, regulates everything that happens in our body. That's the source of life. The power that made the body heals and controls the body throughout our lifetime. So now if this nerve coming down here going to the pancreas, for instance, is got pressure on it, and it's shut down like a dimmer switch. So only 50% of the intelligence is getting into the pancreas. Is that organ going to be healthier or sicker? Is it going to work better or worse? Right? So what happens is maybe you stop producing the right amount of insulin, and then your blood sugar goes up, and then you go to the doctor, and what does the doctor do? He gives you medication to regulate it. But what's happening inside, is that still working, or is it maybe getting sicker over time because it's not getting the proper messages? And so that condition that I just described is called a subluxation. And that's something that we deal with in our office. Because let me show you what happens here with the spine. When we look at the spine, this is what protects our nervous system. In fact, well, your brain, starting in the skull, is protected by your cranium, by your skull, right? It's the most precious part of our body. It's the most well protected. You know, when I go to grade schools and I talk to kids, I ask them, what's the most important organ? And they say, heart and lungs, which they're vital organs. They're really important. But even the heart and lungs are not nearly protected like the brain. You know, they're in a rib cage. They're way more vulnerable. But your brain is very, very important and very delicate, so it's encased in bone. And the rest of your spinal cord, which is the extension of the brain, is also encased in bone. But it's not one solid mass of bone, or we wouldn't be able to move. So the intelligence of the body is incredible. It made individual bones so we can be mobile and we can move. So the individual bones of the spine are called vertebrae. In between the vertebrae are discs, like cushions or shock absorbers. Then of course you have your spinal cord. You have all the spinal nerves. And all this intelligence is flowing from the brain through the nerves and back, and that's how our body knows what to do properly. But sometimes what happens from the stresses of life, it can cause our spine to shift out of alignment. So if your spine's supposed to be like this, and everything's in proper alignment and the nerves are flowing freely, from the front it should be straight, from the side it should be curved. And so from the front, if it gets shifted like this, that can put dangerous pressure on those nerves. And like we talked about the pancreas, if these nerves are going to the colon, it can affect the colon. I can't tell you how often people have come to me with low back pain, and we ask them what else is going on, and they'll say, well, my digestive problem. But I take, you know, Pepto-Bismol or whatever it is, and they're managing it, and they've come to just accept it. And when we straighten out the spine and that back pain goes away, how many times does the digestive problems improve? At least 9 out of 10 times. Because the same nerves are what's controlling those organs. So if there's less pressure on those nerves, now that intelligence can come through and the body can heal itself. And so your spine is critically important. It protects 3 main areas of your nervous system. I want everybody to take their pinky and put it behind your ear to that little spot there. And go ahead and push in there. It's a little bit tender there probably. And everybody say, Superman. Superman. Right? That's where he injured himself. That's where your brainstem is. That's a critical area. That controls your thyroid gland. That controls your hormonal functions. That controls... This is like the orchestra leader for the rest of the body up here. So what happened was he injured himself here, but he couldn't feel his feet. Right? People had to push on his colon for him to go to the bathroom. He was on a respirator for his heart. And eventually it just didn't... He couldn't sustain anymore. And that's because he was injured from the brainstem. So that's a critical area. Then the rest of the spine is protecting the spinal cord. And all these nerves are going out to the different parts of the organ. And all the nerves that come out of the spine are also being protected by the spine. But if your spine is not in proper alignment, it's shutting down on those organs. The neck should have a curve like a banana from the side. And what are we doing today? We're sitting at computers for longer and longer hours. We're looking at, I saw my neighbor, a teenage kid, standing at the bus stop like this, looking at his phone. I could see his whole neck going like this. And I went, oh, because I know what would happen if I took a banana and did this. What would happen to the fruit inside? Not good, right? So this is what we're doing to our body all the time. So if there's less than 100% nerve flow, is the body going to work better or worse? It's going to have less intelligence, and it's just not going to work the same way. So that is the source of healing in our body. And so I guess you guys want to know the 4th question, right? How are we doing so far? Good. So the 4th question is, now that you have this information, when will you do something with it? When are you going to do something about it? You now have the knowledge. You know, knowledge is information. They say information, knowledge is power. Really, wisdom is how to use that information. And so having that information, like I said, you know, talking about going to the gym and getting in the gym are 2 different things. And so who here would like to live to 94 years old in quality health? Right? I do. I want to live beyond 94, in fact. So when's the best time to start taking care of our health? When we're 93?
Now.
When we're 92? Now, exactly. Absolutely. So I have a gift for everyone here tonight, and this gift is an opportunity that you can get your spine and nervous system checked. When somebody comes into my office, I sit with you, I discuss your health, your overall health, any problems that you're having. We do an examination, we check your neurology, we do an orthopedic, neurological, chiropractic examination to see if the nerves are interfered with. We take x-rays, we take specialized x-rays called motion study x-rays that determine exactly where the problems are. And in my office, and that's what I do on day one in my office. On the second day, because I need a little bit of time to look it over, I have you come back. And who here has had like an MRI or a CAT scan or a DEXA scan and didn't know what the heck the thing said, right? So I call that a doctor-patient relationship. The doctor is up here just telling you the way it is. In my office, it's a doctor-doctor relationship. What I will do is I'll teach you how to read the x-ray. When you look at the x-ray, you'll see where the problem is. You'll say, oh yeah, that's what's causing my headaches. That makes sense. And that one I didn't know about. And so you'll be able to see where the problems are, what's working, what's not working. And on that second day, I'll give you recommendations if we find whatever we find to how to fix that. What I find typically is there are two obstacles. I just celebrated my 25-year anniversary in practice. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, let me tell you my story real quick. I grew up in New York City. I was a high school dropout. I went to school for culinary arts. Then I went for hotel management. Yeah, I was a high school dropout. My brother went to MIT on a full scholarship, so it wasn't a good thing. I got in a lot of trouble. And so, but what happened was I had terrible back problems. My back would be in so much pain starting as a teenager that I was paralyzed for 2 or 3 days when I was a teenager in my parents' house. I was laid out on the floor, nobody else was home, and I wondered, am I going to die here? Like if the house went on fire, I couldn't get up from the floor onto the bed for several hours. Eventually I made my way onto the bed, eventually somebody came home, and I was sitting there for 2 or 3 days in my parents' house before I could get going again. And then I got going, and then I thought I was okay. And then I got involved in the restaurant field. I worked at some really top-notch restaurants in New York City. After I learned to be a chef and a manager, I became a waiter because that was where they were making more money. And I worked in high-end French restaurants where we carried these big silver trays. And I tell you, I had to wear a back brace. We used to wear tuxedos. I had a back brace on, and I really wondered, I'm 20 years old. How am I going to make it through the rest of my life? I didn't know what happened. And one person told me about chiropractic. And I went to see this chiropractor, and I thought it was crazy at first, but I let him do what he did. And I was so blown away. I was so impressed that I went to become a chiropractor. But it became so much more to me than just fixing my back, because my overall health, my whole understanding of where health comes from and how to be healthy and to know that I will have predictable health, that my children are in perfect health and have never taken any drugs. Maybe I don't know when the kids have taken drugs, like maybe a handful 5 times in their life, if that much. Maybe, yeah, mom says just once. Because they're so healthy, because we make sure their spine and their nervous system and that life force is flowing at 100%. And so, because one person told me, now not only do I get to enjoy the benefits of chiropractic with my family, but I get to help so many people, and we have just such a blessed life. And that's why I'm doing this tonight, because we want to bless more lives and we want to help more people avoid the pitfalls that are so prevalent today in our society. So many people are sick and don't know where to turn. And the last thing I'm going to do is just share a little story with you. So the story is about a man whose town was flooding. And he eventually got up on the roof because he didn't get out of town, and the floodwaters came up, and he's sitting on his roof, and he's like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to drown here. And he starts praying to God to help him. and he's praying, and he's praying, and as he's praying, this rowboat comes. And the guy says, hey, come on in, we'll help you. And he goes, no, I'm praying to God, he's going to help me, I have faith. And so eventually the rowboat leaves. And then a bigger boat comes. And they say, dude, you're going to drown, come on with us, we'll help, we'll save you. And he goes, I'm faithful, I have faith, I'm praying to God, I know he's going to save me. So they move on. Then a helicopter comes and they're trying to drop him a line. And he says, no, I'm good, I know God will save me, I'm faithful and I'm praying. And eventually, hesitantly, they leave him too. And the waters rise and he drowns. And he goes to heaven and eventually has his time to speak with God. And he says, God, I don't understand. I'm a good man, I lived a good life, I was faithful. And I prayed and I was faithful and I prayed and I was faithful. And God said back to him, I sent a rowboat. I sent another boat. I sent the helicopter. I mean, what more do you want from me? And so I see this as a boat or the life preserver that I'm throwing to all you tonight. Please take advantage of our offer. You'll be glad you did. I hope everybody really enjoys their dinner tonight. Thank you all for coming. Have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you would like to request an appointment, just click on the link or call our office at 410-461-3435 and we will look forward to serving you.